I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old on Old. And this week, we're going to be looking at a movie that few filmmakers can do. It makes you feel like a kid again. I'm talking about 1988's Big. So, if you guys are new to the series, what I do every single week is I break down a classic film I've never seen before. I talk about its historical context, and I also look at why I consider it classic and why it sort of stood up today and why we're still talking about it. And I also look at my thoughts from it, sort of looking at it from a 2018 viewpoint and seeing if it holds up or what certain things that don't hold up, or maybe it's a perfect movie and that's why it's a classic today. And Big, if you don't know, it's a movie about a boy who goes to a Zoltar machine at a carnival and wishes to be a man, and when he wakes up the next morning, he is a man, and we see him live his life and sort of live all of his dreams of being a man and can make money and do his own things and being independent. That's the plot of the movie, but in transitioning into the historical context, the movie mostly is known for being a launching point for Tom Hanks' career. He done Splash, which was 1984, but this was another movie where I really just sort of launched him into superstardom. The movie did very well at the box office. It made $151 million on an $18 million budget. It really cemented him as a leading man. Like, this is the guy. And then afterwards, I believe 5 years later was Philadelphia, which he won his Oscar for, and then 6 years was Forrest Gump, and then in between that there was The Burbs, and I think Turner and Hooch, which are, maybe not the most critically well-received movies, but they were at least leading sort of star man performances that he wasn't getting necessarily after Splash or necessarily at this caliber. So really the Big really launched him. And actually it was also notable to mention Penny Marshall. She was the first female director to have a movie gross over $100 million. And so that was an incredible achievement for her. And the movie did very well. But this was also a trend, actually. As I was reading about reviews written in 1988, I didn't know about this, that there was a movie that year called 18 Again, which was about an 81-year-old who turned 18. And then there was there's other movies like Chevy Chase, Oh Heavenly Dog, where he turns into a dog a few years before that. So body switching had existed. It wasn't in an innovative way that Tom Hanks did it, but it was innovative in the sense that it was the only film that really wasn't just a gimmick. It was compassionate about its characters, and it was more than just an interesting story beat, and actually serviced as a movie. Now going into the film, I was a little concerned because I'd seen these type of movies before. I grew up on your Freaky Fridays and your 17 Agains. So I was a little bit worried about if Big was going to be good or not, because maybe I'd seen it before. Which is, a problem with a lot of these old movies, which you're always concerned of, maybe it's so influential that I've seen it before and therefore its influence feels derivative in an odd kind of a way. But really, when I saw this was coming to my local theater, I knew I had to see it because I heard so many great things about it. And transitioning into my thoughts now, the first thing that I thought when I walked out of the theater was the cinematography. I don't think if I would have watched that on my PS4, I would have gotten the same sort of initial response to it. But because I saw it the way the filmmaker, Penny Marshall, intended it to be, I saw it in a whole different kind of light. I saw it as this amazing movie in the cinematography that it is. I mean, there's incredible shots of Josh at the carnival, and at the end where the house is sort of portrayed in this heavenly almost haven for Josh he wants to go back to so badly, and the fall, so the leaves are all crunchy and whatnot, so it has that sort of great sort of coolness in the air that Sonnenfeld captures so beautifully. And then just the way he captures it from his perspective, the way the buildings are so incredibly tall, and the carnival, the lights are so bright and the rides are so big, and it's so hectic in that way, and just sort of seeing the glancing kind of way really puts you in that kid aspect. Plus also using naturalistic lighting really helped the movie to allow you to keep us in sort of Josh's perspective by using sort of the naturalistic lighting of using shadows over people's ways to give you that sort of POV type of view. And then I realized how really underappreciated this movie is. I mean, I know people love it. It was loved enough to be put into theaters, which is kind of rare. Only a few movies sort of a year happen to do that. But I think that it sort of gets lost because Tom Hanks has had such a prolific career in the 80s, which was a great time for coming of age movies, that we see this happen. So with the 80s, I mean, you think Breakfast Club, you think Stand By Me, Coming of Age, but this is not really in the conversation. Or, Tom Hanks, you think of some of his great performances, Captain Phillips, or Forrest Gump, or Saving Private Ryan, Castaway. You don't think about necessarily Big all the time because you think of all these more sort of serious dramatic roles which he won his Oscar for, or, stuff like that. But I think maybe the reason why it wasn't sort of, and hasn't been sort of well regarded is because of the premise, the idea of a man, sort of a little boy who turns into a man who falls in love with a 30-year-old woman. It's kind of odd and weird, and sort of the stuff that he does. But I just think that maybe that's sort of a cheap criticism because you always think about that when you're thinking back on the movie, like, oh yeah, that was kind of weird, wasn't it? But while you're in the movie, it's a testament to the filmmakers' skill that they were able, and Penny Marshall was able to do. Make you feel that this was natural. This was a natural progression of Josh's, who is the character by Tom Hanks plays, his progression, that he would fall in love with this type of person because they're in the same atmosphere. And of course, Elizabeth Perkins' character Susan is a woman, and she sees doesn't see a little kid, she sees a man. And I think that even though it talks about sex and relationships and things like that, it doesn't avoid it. It doesn't totally forget about it. It confronts the issue and deals with it in a very tasteful way, and always answers your questions before you ask them, which great movies do. You always think about, what about this, what about that? They always either confront it in a way that I think feels believable, at least at the time, or at least during you're watching the movie, which is what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to think about those things, or just little things like, how is Josh paying for his apartment? How is he getting around town? Money, stuff like that. They always answer those questions before you even ask them, so they get that out of the way, so you're always just enjoying and seeing it from Josh's perspective and seeing not the hardship, but the sort of fantasy fulfillment of seeing a 12-year-old and sort of making you feel like a kid in this guy's body and doing whatever you want with kind of no consequences. Sort of a 12-year-old with copious amounts of money. And then Penny Marshall uses sort of his outlook and his new perspective to really comment and ask questions about the validity of adult life, and sort of almost in a way is satirical and satirizes it. The way she talks about, how Elizabeth Perkins' character Susan comes to his place, and she immediately asks for, aren't you going to get me a bottle of wine, or, I'm tired, I should go home. These typical adult lines, and makes fun of it. Because, Tom Hanks, he asks the question of why, and really Tom Hanks is the central force of this movie. He has an incredible job. It's one of his hardest performances. I think maybe his hardest performance, because he has to act like a kid the entire time, and there's not a second where you don't believe that that's a little boy in that guy's body. You see almost through Tom Hanks into the character of Josh, because we saw him as a 12-year-old, right? So Tom Hanks does a really incredible job of just making him seem very fun and toes the line between being too kiddie and sort of cringy in that sort of sense, and being just utterly fun and charming and delightful, which is what the movie is at the end of the day. I think it is. But going back to that satirical aspect to it, he asked that question, why, which we're just asking why. It hit me that hard because it was like, oh yeah, just why do we do this? Why is this sort of a social thing? That why as a kid, I always thought, you can't stop eating ice cream. You can't just do all this stuff. You still follow the sort of structure that you were as a kid, and you have to have a job, you have to eat well, why? Obviously there are reasons to it, and you have to be an adult in certain aspects, but you can still have that sort of kid energy too. I think a lot of adults do that when they move into adulthood. They sort of think that's childish. Throwing a ball, playing football outside is childish. But Big really shows us, and Penny Marshall I think believes what I believe, that the fun in it all, and sort of taking the seriousness out of life, and ultimately that's why Susan falls for Tom Hanks' character Josh, because he is different, because he has a different outlook on life, because he's not boring like all these adults. It's a weird sort of satirical thing that I wasn't expecting, and I think that's why it's a great family movie, because there's the fantasy fulfillment as a kid, seeing just a kid doing all these great things and going to toy stores and just the fun that happens there. But then there's also the satirical aspect for the adults, to sort of ask themselves the question, oh yeah, why do we have to go get coffee and do all this stuff? Why can't we go for an ice cream or something like that? And I think I'm in a great age right now where I'm a little bit in between, where I'm still young enough to think the sort of the kid film thing, I still want to do those things. If I was a man of a 30-year-old and I had all this money, I would do a lot of the same stuff Josh does. But then also, I'm still old enough and far enough removed from it by sort of see the adult satirical aspect that I wasn't expecting, and sort of question a lot of the social fabric of society's sort of rules just by asking the question, why? Few films really are able to capture that childlike experience, and I think that by really allowing us to feel, Tom Hanks' central performance allows us to feel Josh really embarking on this new journey. It's an amazing movie. I was just a huge fan of it. And it's a great family movie, and a movie that I think totally holds up. It doesn't feel dated at all. It just has those weird aspects, but it confronts them and deals with it compassionately, and really cares about the character of Josh and the character of Susan, and his best friend, which I'm unfortunately forgetting his name of. But I think it should be talked in that conversation of your Stand By Me's, of the Breakfast Clubs, in the same way that they are. That this is a great family movie, a great coming of age movie, because Tom Hanks embodies a 12-year-old at the end of the day. So that's about it. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Make sure you comment below. Let me know some of your favorite Tom Hanks movies. And check around every week for old on old episodes. I'm having a blast with the series and hope you are too. I also have Connor the Contrarian podcast that comes out every week. Love to hear your comments. Just to know that you guys are out there. That's about it. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. And until next time, stay tuned.